Good morning. And welcome to the First Unitarian Church of Des Moines. We're a community of folk who are not determined by creed, but by covenant. And I'm Barb Martin, she, her, a member of the celebrant team. Our church is located on lands that are the traditional territory of the indigenous Iowa peoples, who call themselves Bakojay. As we enter this space, let us recommit to understanding the history of the land it occupies and to owning our part in the work of education, reparation, and healing. If you're here with children today, feel free to keep them with you or to use the petite play place in the back. And if you don't want to really keep them with you, you got babies or toddlers, there is a place downstairs where you can also, they will take care of them for you. And at 10:45 today, all the kids from kindergarten through high school do have programming downstairs today. And please join us after this service for our fellowship, food, and funds sale. If there's anything left, last night was really great. I hope you still have some choices. Plenty left. Okay, don't miss it. And silence your cell phones, and you on Zoom, just keep muted throughout the service. That'd be great. Now we have a spotlight from Cheryl Long about Amos.
It's spring, and do I have a deal for you? Do you like to walk? Because we're going to take a walk that's probably going to have a lot of impact. We are going to walk on the south side on Saturday, May 6th, for the first time to see what our neighbors are going to think about a piece of property that someone is donating to the city for permanent affordable housing. We are so excited. We have the city and the city money behind us. We have our church, honestly, the people in our church are the ones who really have been spearheading this, and we are so excited about it. So we'd like to offer you an opportunity to join us. You don't have to know anything about community land trusts or anything. All we're going to do is ask our neighbors what they really would like to see there, because they have to be a big part of this project. So it is May 6th, Saturday, and I will be back in the back with this so that you can get more information about where it is and when. It's in the morning. And I hate being lonely. So if you could just anybody, just come up and talk to me and let me give you one of these things. This is one of the most exciting things that will have an impact for generations. Thanks a lot.
And I believe here comes Sally Merritt, who's going to represent. Okay. Okay, this is Leanne Back. Leanne Back.
I'll kick you off for a minute, okay? Good morning. My name is Leanne Back, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. And I am part of one of the members of the board of trustees here at church. Reba was ill this morning, so she texted me at 7:30 and said, "Could you please do this?" So bear with me as I try to remember all the things that she asked me to do. But of course, this is regarding the budget. We still need pledges. I understand that some of you cannot pledge. We've been talking to people that could possibly up their pledge to help us out. We have, I gotta get the numbers here. We have raised $450,000, or $455,000, which is 74% of our goal of 615,000. So we still have several dollars yet to bring in to help us balance our budget. This week, when we asked for people to up their pledges, 11 households did, including mine, and thank you for that. We appreciate that. And anyone else that can find it in their hearts to raise their pledge, just contact Alice Stewart in the office, and she will help you with that. So we have some pretty cool programs here in the church. We just heard from Cheryl about Amos. Faith formation is important to many of us. Coffee, hospitality, pastoral care, choir, and guest musicians. Faith in Action, Trans Lives Festival, Family Promise. To keep those going, we need to have the money to fund them. I don't think any of us want to see that money or those programs go away because we didn't find it within ourselves to help out our church and help out these programs. Plus maintenance, building maintenance, office supplies, all of those things, we need to have donations to help cover some of those things. I know we all love it here. We all came for different reasons and stayed for different reasons. Please try to find it in your heart to help us get this budget balanced by June. Thank you.
My name is Gustav Elge. My pronouns are he, him, and the chalice lighting today is, there is a proverb that the birds of worry or change fly over your head. This you cannot change. But that they build nests in your hair. This you can prevent.
Our gathering song this morning, to be led by Ann Roseboom. I know this rose will open, 396 in the gray hymnal.
We get to do another round. Bruce is going to play the melody here. We'll sing it through in unison once, and then we'll sing it as a round twice. Part 2 is going to come in at number 2.
I know this rose will open.
And now for the scary story. There's a nightmare in my closet. All right, what do we do about it? I wish I had all the little children up here around me. That was so much fun in those days. We'll work it out sometime. Okay, there used to be a nightmare in my closet. Well, before going to sleep, I always closed that closet door. And when I was safe in bed, I'd peek. Sometimes. And one night, I decided to get rid of my nightmare once and for all. As soon as the room was dark, I heard him creeping toward me. Well, quickly I turned on the light and I caught him sitting on the foot of my bed. And you should see him. He has his gun, he has his cannons, he has his soldiers. He turned the light on and there was the ghost. "Go away, nightmare, or I'll shoot you," I said. Well, I shot him anyway. He didn't. And my nightmare then began to cry. I was mad. Well, but not too mad. "Nightmare, be quiet, or you'll wake Mommy and Daddy," I said. So he wouldn't stop crying, so I took him by the hand and I tucked him in bed and I closed the closet door. Well, I suppose there's another nightmare in my closet, but my bed's not big enough for three. So he snuggles up and he goes to sleep, and what do you know? Another monster nightmare comes out of the closet. But so what? There's no more fear. He's sound asleep. So this is a classic story of being brave at bedtime. Okay.
The mission of First Unitarian Church is to grow ethically and spiritually, serve justly, and love radically. Your gifts of time and presence and money make all of this possible. Every week, half of the collection given in the service goes directly to the wider community to support our Faith in Action partners. Let's Talk collaborates with the Des Moines Public Schools to help young people resolve conflict. Hawthorne Hill works with unhoused families toward permanent, affordable housing, which is a human right. You may give through the plate as it passes, or you may give online through the link in the chat. Thank you.
A church is not a building, but a community. As a community of human hands and human hearts, we come together to share our laughter and our tears, and to bear witness and minister to one another as we struggle with life's joys and life's sorrows. May we hold in our thoughts and our prayers this week Don Shepard, who is recovering from eye surgery, which diminished his eyesight. There's been improvement this week as his vision is slowly returning. And Susan Dellinger, who's at Methodist Hospital awaiting results for breathing difficulties. Let us share together now the names of anyone we know who could use some special care and attention. You may call the names out loud or type into the chat. And as we share these names, may the love of this community hold them all. May the light of our community shine on the broken places of the world. May the work of our hands and hearts support, aid, and comfort all those who hunger or thirst for food or water, justice or freedom. May we never look away when we are needed. May those who are grieving be comforted. May those who are tired find rest. May the broken places be healed. May those who are filled with joy and laughter be abundant. Now, together, we light 3 candles, one for the joys and sorrows we've shared, one for the names we've spoken, and one last candle for all of the joys and all of the sorrows which are deeply held but remain unspoken here today.
From the Courage to Change. It's part of the Al-Anon program. A chief activator of our defects has been self-centered fear, primarily fear that we would lose something that we already possessed or would fail to get something that we demanded. Living upon a basis of unsatisfied demands, we were in a state of continual disturbance and frustration. Then fear, in turn, generates more character defects. Unreasonable fear that our instincts will not be satisfied, drives us to covet the possessions of others, to lust for sex and power, to become angry when our instinctive demands are threatened, to be envious when the ambitions of others seem to be realized while ours are not. We eat, drink, and grab for more of everything than we need, fearing that we shall never have enough. These fears are the termites that ceaselessly devour the foundations of whatever sort of life we try to build. I suspect that if I reclaimed all the minutes, hours, and days that I have sacrificed to worry and fear, I'd add years to my life. And when I succumb to worry, I open a Pandora's box of terrifying pictures, paranoiac voices, and relentless self-criticism. the more attention I pay to the mental static, the more I lose my foothold in reality. Now, to break the cycle of worry and fear, I'm learning to focus all my attention on this very moment. Instead of running away, I'm learning to look at the source of my distress. As a result, I find that pain passes much more quickly, and what I gain is freedom from fear. Instead, I can occupy myself with living. And we will now live through a glorious song brought to us by the Bell Avenue Ringers. loving in fear. Spirit of life, God of love, grant me the courage to love boldly in the face of my greatest fears. Grow me in your wisdom and let my actions speak when silence threatens justice and indifference disturbs peace. When gossip, hate, and cruelty arise among friends or in public places, help me bravely walk forward with love. When I defensively assert certainty in the presence of the unknown, grant me the courage to live comfortably in the unanswerable questions of life. Bless me with the eternal gift of not knowing, and let it take root in me until it pushes forth shoots of understanding and branches of humility. And now we have a responsive reading, which we haven't had for a long time. If you turn to page 658 in the gray hymnal, I will start and you will respond, as in responsive reading. Okay. To laugh is to risk appearing the fool. To reach out for another is to risk exposing our true self. To place our ideas, our dreams before the crowd is to risk loss. To love is to risk not being loved in return. To hope is to risk despair. To try is to risk failure. To live is to risk dying. And our next song is in the green hymnal, 1012. When I am frightened.
Will you reassure
Good morning. My name is Louise Alcorn. I am a member here at First Unitarian. I'm happy to be addressed as she, her, hers, or hey, Wheezy. I did a version of this service twice, back in 2004. Some of you long-timers may remember that I was famously interrupted by folk singer the first time I did this service. It's a great story. Buy me a beer. I rewrote this service in 2020 in the midst of real fears, well, mostly real, of a global pandemic. But I kept it pretty light, and I shared with you how I coped and still cope with both everyday and existential fear. There was a lot about birds. It was pretty good. In both services, I focused on identifying rational versus irrational fears, how they lead to angry behavior and poor decisions. I lent heavily on readings like the ones you heard earlier from the AA and Al-Anon programs, because there's some really useful stuff in there. I recommend it. I joked at each service that one day I wanted to do a talk entitled A Culture of Fear, or Why the World Needs a 12-Step Program. Well, folks, this is that service. With apologies, there will be fewer bird jokes. In fact, I have to say, as I was revising this up till yesterday afternoon, it got less and less funny. I know the title says, I promise it will be funny. But as the winds tear through and life is frankly getting a little awful, it was hard. There still will be humor, I promise. So the title, The Culture of Fear, came from a book of the same name that I discovered before my first service. So it's by Barry Glassner, a sociology professor, and it unpacks the problem of misinformation in our society, specifically why we are afraid and how we are made afraid of all the wrong things, while ignoring actual reality-based challenges like poverty and racism. Here's the thing. He wrote the book in the late 90s, pre-9/11, pre-Twin Towers, post-Timothy McVeigh, but pre-pandemic. I read it first in 2003 and realized even then that 9/11 and the subsequent decades-long wars on terrorism had simply calcified the problem of bad data hyped by bad actors, which he'd described. It was very prescient. His chapter on metaphoric illnesses, in which, among other scares, he recounted anti-vaccine efforts in the 80s, based in bad science and media misinformation, which was only more prescient in 2020 as I was rewriting, especially as I watched the president tell us to swallow bleach. Sorry, my nose is running, I apologize, I blame the wind. So then his chapter titled Black Men begins, journalists, politicians, and other opinion leaders foster fears about particular groups of people, both by what they play up and what they play down. He discusses the public perception of race and crime contrasted with the verifiable data about who are the actual victims of crime. Again, this is 20 years ago. Later, I listened to our own Harvey Harrison expand my understanding of the inequalities of our justice system and the problem of mass incarceration, which Glassner had shown was being distorted by the media. So as I rewrote my service in 2020, Black Lives Matter was perhaps finally forcing us to focus on the real effects of our deeply racist society on people of color, both on their lived experience, but also on our societal perceptions of that experience, which have always been badly, deliberately skewed. So dated as it is now, I keep going back to the book's basic premise that it's so easy and often profitable to make people afraid of something fake or distorted, and that this distortion keeps us from facing what is genuinely wrong. Now, this distortion may be the result of simple greed to sell media or ideology, but it may also be the result of the natural human tendency to point and scream at overblown problem B, because we just can't talk about actual problem A. For example, you may obsess about the cost of gas and count every mile and penny. That's real, but when your real worry, the one you cannot utter, is that you'll lose your job. But it's easier to think about the cost of gas. We may look with disdain at, say, anti-vaxxers who base their arguments on false anecdotes from celebrities, and we declare they just don't understand science, which may be true, but we should be cautious and ask ourselves, what deep-seated fear is being expressed here? Is it actual distrust of medical science, or a more generalized, unarticulated fear that we cannot protect our children? That if they get sick, we need someone to blame. Their fear is misdirected, but it's there, and dismissing it doesn't help the dialogue. So distortion of reality is also at the very root of addiction and addictive personalities. This is where the 12 steps comes in. For anyone who has lived with an addict or a narcissist, you know that their greatest power is creating their own reality and making others live in it. Again, I point to Mr. Bleach. 4 years of addictive behavior. Think about it. The Al-Anon and AA readings that Barb shared earlier, although these describe how an addictive brain works, also nicely describe cultural reactions on a larger scale. So all humans on some level make decisions based in part on fear. This is perfectly natural. Fear of what we do not understand, and increasingly in modern society, fear that we are losing something specific or non-specific, the American way, whatever the hell that is. But we know that it's just slipping away, even if we cannot articulate it, especially if we cannot articulate it. This fear is fed, watered, and fertilized by the remarkable echo chamber of social media. So humans are tribal, right? And if the tribe tells us to be afraid of something, we are inclined to believe it. But what if, as Barb's reading described, our tribe is living upon a basis of unsatisfied demands in a state of continual disturbance and frustration? So is the tribe distorting reality? And what should we believe? So before my last service, I spent a couple of evenings watching primetime television, and I really watched those commercials. You're welcome, it was terrible. And I kept a particularly critical eye on the fear messages. I'm so glad I have streaming now. I can't stand commercials. Anyways, in one evening of primetime viewing, I was encouraged to fear going bald. My digestion, too much acid, too little fiber. My hair, is it brittle, does it shine? My car's tires, this was big. My car's tires, are they good enough? Will I skid and kill someone? Will they carry my children safely? I don't even have children. Bad breath, body odor. Being fat, that came up no less than 4 times. And last, but by no means least, I should fear for the safety of my home from burglars, carbon monoxide, and termites. It made me want to run screaming into the street where I might have been hit by a car with bald tires. You're welcome. Seriously, it was a terrible evening. All right. Glassner writes, one of the paradoxes of a culture of fear is that serious problems remain widely ignored, even though they give rise to precisely the dangers that the populace most abhors. So poverty, for example, correlates strongly to child abuse, crime, and drug abuse. Income inequality is also associated with adverse outcomes for society as a whole, and some argue political stability in a nation, especially one where we think ourselves not as haves and have-nots, but as haves and will-haves. which is America. I was an American Studies major in college, so the phrase from 12-step about we eat, drink, and grab for more of everything we need, fearing we shall never have enough, has always struck me as particularly American. Every time I listen to NPR's Marketplace and they say, we're worried that people aren't buying enough stuff because it's going to ruin our economy, makes me shudder. I'm not implying that advertisers and politicians invented fear as a motivator. They simply harness and exploit it for their own purposes. Again, perfectly natural, perfectly human. So if one can have a favorite economist, right? Mine is Robert Reich. Okay, he's the one-time Secretary of Labor from the Clinton administration who resigned in some frustration, frankly, when no one listened to his reality-based arguments about poverty and inequality. If you haven't watched Reich's engaging inequality media videos on YouTube, I strongly recommend them. So although his focus is usually the economy, explained super clearly with cool infographics and cartoons, really, strong recommend. A recent commentary that he did reflected a familiar distortion that has sadly come around again. He says, "Let me remind you, bigotry against minority groups based on sexual orientation or gender identity, such as the trans community, is a way fascism takes root. As the world tragically witnessed in Europe in the 20s and 30s, the politics of sexual anxiety gains traction when traditional male gender roles of family provider and protector are hit by economic insecurity. Fascist politics distorts and expands this male anxiety into fear that one's family is under existential threat from LGBTQ plus people who reject the family's traditional structure and traditions. That narrative is back." Many of you know that I'm a public librarian. I am your friendly neighborhood librarian. In a way that we haven't dealt with since the McCarthy era, my profession is under siege from so-called moms for liberty. Have you encountered them? Who would have you believe, who would have you fear that my job is to force alternative lifestyles on your children. I don't have that kind of time. The reality, queer-focused stories and queer romances are flying off our shelves because people want to read them. We can't keep them in stock. They have long hold lists, mostly made up of straight cis white people, because story is where we safely explore that which is outside our lived experience. It's a way that we face fear or curiosity or just read a really good romance. There has been some good research about the kind of people who join cults, extremist militia groups, incel and anti-Semite chat rooms, scary places, but also milder but equally pernicious affinity groups based in falsehood and isms. So these adherents may or may not believe all or even most of what is being spouted, but that tribal sense of belonging, of being understood, is all powerful. So they tell us, yes, we are afraid of the same things you are, and we're going to tell you who to blame. It's so powerful. This is entirely human. And again, to bring it back to the 12-step, it's a classic addict's way of looking at the world. Ask many alcoholics about their destructive behaviors, and they are likely to give you a list of who is to blame. That list may even be real: abusive parents, an oppressive society, but the behaviors are based in fear. Fear of change, fear of being revealed. I would argue it's similar with these affinity groups, so your Moms for Liberty and so forth. Making you afraid of fake problem B, like trans kids or scary books, means that you don't have to acknowledge your part in real problem A, whatever that might be. Poverty, income inequality, difference, othering. So for some years, I have had a theory, this I believe, if you will. It's heavily influenced by 12-step programs, as in the readings that Barb gave. The theory goes something like this, that any decisions we make as individuals, as families, as communities, or as nations, I like to think big, that any decisions we make that are based primarily on fear or on fear's playmates, anger and hatred, these decisions never turn out well. They're not healthy, and they don't have healthy outcomes. Whatever short-term benefits we might imagine, they are rarely lasting or ultimately conducive to personal or corporate growth and happiness. That's me thinking big since the early noughts. So, we do live in a culture of fear. Fear is a great motivator and also a great manipulator. These messages aren't just in families with addiction. So, if we are told over and over again that going into the city will get us killed, what are the chances we'll go downtown to see a show? What effect will this ultimately have on that city's urban life and the prevalence of white flight? More broadly, if we're convinced, told even, that a group of people mean us harm, what are the chances that we'll reach out to them? And what will this reticence do to our relations with our neighbors? That fear is playing out everywhere right now. As the world becomes increasingly uncertain, as the winds blow hard, except of course they just stopped blowing, whatever. It was a great line. Anyhow, as the world becomes uncertain, a perfectly human, fear-based reaction is to worry about what this means for my life, for my comfort and security. We all do this. This is simply human. But we need to step past that fear and ask the right questions. Collectively, we need to acknowledge the culture of fear that exists for others because of the status quo that might be comfortable for us. We have to overcome our fears, our loss of security, of change, even of rejection. So the fourth step of AA asks us to take a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Again, I think this can be applied collectively, not just individually. So I know we've had enough anger recently to last a lifetime. It's become our national dialogue, just sort of being pissy at each other. Very annoying. But anger is so often an extension and expression of fear, of being afraid of something. And again, sometimes it's an unarticulated something. It's so easy to make a soundbite out of blaming. And because we all live with these emotions, again, perfectly natural, it feels like truth, even when it's not. So the 10th step tells us to continue to take this personal inventory, and when we are wrong, promptly admit it. So I think there's a question that we need to include in the national dialogue. Are we as a nation, as a people, acting primarily out of fear? Some of the recent remarkable pieces on white fragility and privilege really do ask this question, which is an excellent start. But as Robert Reich reminds us, we are also being fed false narratives, again, that have historically just thrown us right off track. So we have to be careful, we have to question that. Okay. So I suspect that how we choose to understand, confront, and express our fears individually, collectively, our searching and fearless inventory, will determine in large part who we are as a people and community. So I just want you to think about that. I appreciate you listening to me today. I do want to leave you with one final thought. I talked about my little theory that decisions based on fear don't turn out well. The second reading we had, Loving in Fear, exhorts us to think a different way. So it's sort of the flip side of that theory. That those decisions that we make primarily out of healthy caring, affection, or love are far more likely to lead to growth and joy. So when we reach out without fear to another human, when we stand on the side of love, as our faith has been working on, we reject fear as an obstruction and offer ourselves an opportunity for joy. And remember that the birds of worry or care fly above your head. This you cannot change, but that they build nests in your hair, this you can prevent. Thank you. Please rise in body or spirit to sing hymn 1015 in the teal hymnal, I Know I Can. We're just going to do verses 1, 2, and 4 because they're the best verses.
We'll play it once too.
All the way?
Okay. Though days be dark with storms and burdens weigh my heart, though troubles wait at every turn, I know I can go on. My sorrow heals my soul, and burdens make me strong. Though troubles wait at every turn, I know I can go on. And though the journey is long, the destination is near. Though troubles wait at every turn, I know I can go on.
Do not fear agitation, for agitation is the rhythm of life itself, to be put into motion, to be stirred. Do not fear the movements that decenter what you always thought permanent. You carry within the center of your understanding the compass to show you the way. Carry with you the love that will hold you, the vision that will guide you, the relationships to all beings and the world that will ground you. Go in peace and in gentle agitation to stir this world to the side of love.
Soul of truth, eternal goodness, sojourn with us as we part. Fill our minds with high endeavor. Keep us just and pure in heart. Strengthen us for daily duty. Guide us by the inward light. Hallowed be each coming morning. Calm and peaceful be each night. Amen.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Go in peace.